Good to have you back for this next class. Today we're going to be talking about needed tools, materials, and intellectual tools, things of that type that we use when we're on the mission field. Now, in intellectual considerations, I talked somewhat about different tools, books, encyclopedias, research skills, things of that nature, and I'll be dealing with that this time as well, trying to build on what I've already said and add to it, and then trying to bring the material and the spiritual, uh, the physical, and the sort of esoteric or intellectual together in this particular talk. When we get ready to go to the mission field, we're challenged with many things. And one of the things we're challenged with is what do we do with everything we have up here? And what are we going to do to get established down there? That's no easy process. Sometimes you say, oh, it'd be great, I'll just take everything from up here. But man, the shipping and everything else, getting to do that at one time wasn't all that difficult, I guess. People just seem to do it more. But in these days, it's quite difficult. Yeah, you can rent a container and you can stuff it full of stuff and you can have a truck haul it to some port and everything. But more and more shipping is designed to work with this massive company over here that uses the entire freighter to take containers of their stuff over, or two or three of them go together. They're not really geared too much anymore to one guy showing up with one container. It can be done, but it's not easy. So for that reason, in many cases today, it's just simply much more practical to either store or sell what you have here and get rid of it, or give it away to friends, whatever you want to do with it. And then try to have enough funds on hand that when you get there, you can set up house and secure what you need once you arrive. Now, there's some advantages to that too. You take everything from here, well, then you got everything that nobody else has. It makes you even more different than what you already are. So that can kind of mark you, and it kind of sometimes can set you up for being the victim of theft as well. So for that reason, it's often just better to get it once you get there. So if you're able to develop enough support that you have some money here on hand for setup once you arrive on the field, take your suitcases with your basic clothing, a few things like that, and go. You don't need to take every stick of deodorant you're going to use for the next 3 or 4 years, because you might not be able to get your favorite flavor and brand over there. If they don't use deodorant, you don't need it either. And if they use their own type and their own style and their own fragrance, you can probably get by with that too. And in fact, it won't make you stand out so much. Sometimes what smells good in one culture doesn't smell good in another. So you might not be wanting to use what you have over here anyhow. So you take your basic stuff with you, your clothing and stuff like that, but plan on getting set up once you get there. It has some advantages. One, you'll be helping out the local economy. You'll be making friends as you do it. You go to this storekeeper and you buy it. You go over here and you buy something there. You talk to these people about furniture. You're checking for transportation, all that kind of stuff. And as you do, you begin to interact with the local population. As you interact with them, you build friendships. As you build friendships, you make contacts. And with those contacts, you have open doors then to share the gospel. Pretty hard to walk up to a stranger on the street just saying, hey, let me preach the gospel to you. They're going to say, man, what kind of a crazy guy is this that showed up? We knew those foreigners were crazy, but boy, this one confirms it. As you make friends with them, you can talk to them. And as you can talk to them, you can share with them. And sharing with them, you can begin to share the gospel. So that is one of the advantages to it, and I think that's appropriate as one of the tools you'll need. Because you see, even in living, you use tools you use tools every day. You use skill sets every day. And these are part of your kind of like toolbox, your equipment list that you have. So you get over there and you start making friends, you start talking to people, you start buying things, you start getting set up. And it kind of helps if the local people see in the beginning you don't have absolutely everything. Because if you show up from day one and you've got everything, it kind of creates the impression that you're just this incredibly wealthy person that never had to struggle, that never had to worry about where their next meal is going to come from, about where they're going to eventually get the money to buy a refrigerator or something like that. So it's kind of advantageous to do it like they do, which is little by little. As you get set up, as you begin to establish yourself, as you begin to get into that daily life on this particular mission field. So one of the basic tool sets that you do have is as you do life, you learn how to live in that area. You learn how to do business deals in that area. Yeah, you're going to get probably ripped off a few times, but don't tell me that's never happened to you up here. It probably has. So you have to learn how to negotiate. You have to learn how to purchase in a different country. You have to learn how to see what they have and see if that's going to meet your needs and then secure it to meet your needs. Those are some of the most basic tools that you have in the material area. In the intellectual area, well, that's what we're talking about, just that capacity to understand what's going on over there, to see how they do it. Make good friends, and those friends you make in the beginning will then help you as you move forward. They might go with you if you're going to buy a big ticket item or something. Say, here, I'll help you out. They might know a friend that has a store, and that friend can help you out. And so you start developing in that tool set what is applicable to that area. Now, there may be some things sometimes that you just simply can't get there and you think you're going to need. Now, those aren't probably too common because you see if they don't have them and they don't need them, you probably don't need them either. And if you think you have to have them, it's probably going to be do something that they can't do. And if they can't do, they probably don't see a need for it or appreciate it. One of the worst things you can do is go and preach the gospel using methodologies and equipment that is not accessible to them. Maybe you show up with, your video projector or with your big screen TV or with, whatever, and you're going to present gospel films on it, but they can't do that. And so the day that you're not there with your equipment, evangelism is going to stop. So you have to do whatever's replicable there, whatever they can reproduce right there. And so that's one of the big advantages of using what they have. Now that kind of is bringing together this material and intellectual to develop this needed toolkit that you have to work over there. With that, there'll be some things that we might want to add in the area of specifics. Now I've already talked about maybe a basic set of library books that you're going to use, probably on something like a Kindle or an e-reader or your laptop or something of that nature. Now that's a whole lot more practical than a trunk after trunk of books, which is what I took, which I had to take, then not trunk after trunk. But, books were quite a bit of weight, and I didn't take all that many with me. But I needed them back then. There was nothing else. And I had to cultivate myself mentally while I was out there in the middle of the jungle. And it served to do that. But nowadays you can do it electronically, and everywhere in the world you will. So what you will need to be checking out as you're getting ready to go is what is available over there. There should be missionaries already there you can talk to. If not, you can buy one of these little guides, traveling in Europe or whatever, and traveling in South America or South America on $5 a day or $10 a day or whatever those types of manuals are called. And then look at those things. Read what other people have experienced as they have moved there. Now, that's fascinating. I thought, well, Vicencio, where I live, what's on the internet? So I popped in there one day just to look. There were all these things, surprisingly, about tourists that had gone to Colombia, and they'd made the trip down over the mountain, and they talked about the road and how terrible it was and how frightening it was. Somebody's driven that road thousands of times over the years. I got a chuckle out of it. But it helped me to see it through their eyes, and if I had never been there before, it would have been fascinating to see what they experienced. And so those are the type of things you can do. Now, I've talked about basic research, and I think basic research skills are probably intellectually what you need more than anything else. Now, I'm always a little bit reluctant to bring that up because in our educational system in the States, we use what's called a banking model up to a certain point. In other words, it's giving you information. It's giving you knowledge. Now, it's starting to change. As the internet becomes a repository for knowledge and information, there's less emphasis on storing that information up here in your head. But still, that's kind of the way it goes. In your undergraduate, a lot of your classes are the professor getting up there and saying, here's the information, kind of like what I'm doing here to some degree. And you take that information and it becomes part of who you are. But more and more as we're moving into the future, and certainly as you move up in your educational level, you go from your primary school to your high school to your bachelor's degree, then maybe on to a master's and a doctorate. As you move up, emphasis changes, and it focuses less and less on knowing a certain body of material and more on the skill sets to develop the information and the knowledge that you need to do a particular job. In other words, research. And so I try to put you to doing things where you're going to do it. To your presentation at the some point in this class is with that focus on you looking around what we've talked about in this class, books, a library, internet, whatever, coming up with the information, pulling it together, and then offering it to somebody else. And I'm doing that very specifically to begin to give you an introduction into how to do research and how to use research, to find out what you need, to bring it together, and then to use it in a meaningful and a practical manner. So that's the type of thing that we talk about when we speak of these tool sets that we need, this toolbox type of a thing. It is material, it is intellectual, and spiritual. I talked about the spiritual quite a bit when I talked about, that keeping yourself spiritually alive, but spiritual as well. And in doing that, then you are equipping yourself to encounter whatever situation you find anywhere in the world, to get to the point where you can begin to understand it and function within it, and then reach the point finally where you can start to successfully share your ideas and what's important to you with them. And that's when we come to the point when we can begin to very effectively share our Christian values and our religious beliefs. That's kind of hard to do in the beginning. You'll do some, and you'll find a few people who flock to you and maybe accept right away. Some of those people will be sincere, and some of those people will probably even last, be lifetime Christians. But an awful lot of them are just trying to get from you something that they want. Maybe material possessions, maybe to practice their English, maybe hoping to get a visa to the States or whatever. And so they're there appearing to accept your religious beliefs or whatever in order to establish that connection to get what they want or what they feel that they need to get out of you to move forward in their life. And so if you learn to work in this culture in a very effective way where you become comfortable in it, where you understand it, and where you work within it, from the simplest thing like buying what you need to clean your teeth, or to keep your personal hygiene up, or whatever, clothing, what do they wear, starting from the skin out, that type of thing, and then adapting yourself to them and adapting what they have to your needs, so that the two come together and merge and make you comfortable living in that area, and make it so you fit in reasonably well. Now, you're never going to be 100% one of them, but there's no point in standing out like a sore thumb either, looking so different that people say, who's that strange character over there? You want to get to the point where they are comfortable with you and where you are comfortable with them. And so this tool set or toolkit that I'm talking about, this bringing together of the intellectual and keeping a solid foundation in the spiritual with the material, the things that you actually need to work, is very important. I was on a mission field once visiting and, getting the tour around and seeing what was going on over there and everything else. And this has been quite a few years back, of course. And seeing some of the things they had, I noticed they had a printing press. Now, my mother owned a print shop, so I knew a bit about printing. And I got a printing press here. Yeah, we do. And what do you use it for? Well, nothing. One of the missionaries came down here once, thought we needed a printing press, and they raised money for it, got it, brought it here. Well, then things changed, and they couldn't stay here, and they left, and there's this printing press. And nobody knows how to use it. And so what's it good for? Nothing. It just takes up room. Now, they may have been able to find somebody locally they could have hired if they had money to do it. People there probably knew how to use printing presses. That was pretty common technology even way, way, way back. Of course, now it's laser printers and all that, but they still use printing presses in a lot of the world for a lot of stuff. It's just simply cheaper. It's a more simple technology. It's a more durable technology. It just simply works there, where some of our cutting edge technology doesn't work very well. Too expensive, breaks down too quick, it changes too rapidly, all that. So when we're talking about what you need, it's very important that very quickly you come to appreciate what is available, what you really do need, and what you really do need is only what's going to be available to them. because you simply cannot use methodologies and technologies that they do not have access to, that they do not understand, that they cannot use either to live or to present the gospel. Because if you use it to live, then they're going to say, well, if I'm ever going to be a preacher like that guy, I've got to have everything he has. And if they can't get it, then they won't do it. So those are the reasons that this bringing together of the intellectual and the material into a usable, functional toolkit in that area, in that region, in that culture is so important. Friends will be your keys that you make down there. They'll be the keys to knowing what you need and what you don't need. They'll be helping you out. They'll be guiding you. These tour books, internet research, that type of thing. All of this comes together to make it so you can be a properly functioning and an effective individual there for the preaching of the gospel, for the evangelization of those individuals in our goal as a Christian church to evangelize the world. So be thinking about this kind of stuff. Do a little bit of an exercise. Look into your life and say, now what do I actually really need to live, to exist, to be happy? And you'll probably find out it's a whole lot less material than what you thought. It's a whole lot more simple than what you thought. And it will be a whole lot more adaptable than what you would have been and what it would have been if you just simply take your American materialistic mindset and use it in your process of moving over there and establishing yourself over there. And in the end, you'll be more effective, happier, probably more prosperous too, right here as well, if this is where you decide to stay and where you decide to work. Okay, that pretty well does it then for the needed tools and the material and the intellectual toolkit that you'll be gathering. In our next session, we're going to kind of take a big leap and jump into something very different, and that's intercultural communication. Now, I've advocated to even start an intercultural communication class, strictly that, here at the school. We haven't been able to do it yet, but maybe someday. In the meantime, it's going to be one of the modules or segments within this class on world evangelism or missionary life and work, whatever you want to call it. Okay, have a good day, and we'll see you in the next class.